Alright. The game's back, everyone. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to my reviews today. At this point, you probably just see my reviews of Turning Red and Lightyear just uploaded in this video. I'm not 100% sure yet of this, making this video just my review for Elvis, and then another review for Prey. This video I'll probably do my review for Elvis, and which is directed by Baz Luhrmann, and it mainly focuses on, well, Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll, and through his rise through his 50s and his whole family and his origins, and his relationship with Tom. The hell is his name again? Tom Parker. Okay, Tom Parker, played by Tom Hanks in this movie, and here's the thing. In all honesty and truth, and a lot of my family is going to kill me for saying this because I have a lot of extended family who are big fans of Baz Luhrmann. I've never once liked any of his movies. I thought they've always been extreme speed and dynamicism and just a lot of fadazzle and everything, and it felt like they had story and theme and character second, which is why I've never been a fan of any of his movies. I don't even like Moulin Rouge, and I know a lot of people, other, as I just said, with my own extended family, they're going to kill me for saying that, because I'm really not a fan at all. But it felt like Baz Luhrmann's more stylized and flourish design really did add in a true aesthetic for Elvis that really felt like it thematically mattered. Like, Elvis was just, when you think of his life, of this great, the Las Vegas showman music to it, the Blue Hawaii and the movies and everything, a lot of people don't think, or I didn't, of Tom Porter, because all I thought about was Elvis, because I'm just someone who just loves music growing up. I just listened to the music. I wasn't into the documentaries or anything. I know a lot of people were, and that's good, but I just never knew about Tom Porter in general. And I never knew that he was actually kind of some kind of weird musical producer abuser angle towards him. And as I said, I feel like Baz Luhrmann's much more stylized and speedy approach was much more appropriate for this movie than any other. I will say, and my own big criticisms, I have a few criticisms in this movie. The one is that, as I said, I'm not a big fan of his movies, but his style of approach for this movie, at first for me, was a little hard to get into. I'm like, okay, what are we getting into here? Are we not telling a non-linear story time? But eventually does, and grow into this own narrative, which I thought was very well done. Also, some of the side characters, as well as they were done, I felt like they got kind of sidelines, especially Olivia DeLonge, who plays Priscilla Presley, his wife. I know there's a weird big controversy about them not getting her age right, because, well, when he was in his mid-20s, she was 14. So Elvis was a creep. I did not know that, and that was a shocking fact I did not know. That doesn't diminish my love for Elvis as a musician, but that is just like, oh, jeez, man. But anyway, and I do think some of the movie is weird, because The Batman, for me, is my favorite movie of this year, but this movie suffers the same thing with this as The Batman did, is that it was very long, and when I watched it, I was like, there's a lot I really enjoyed about it, and in my mind, I'm just like, I don't know what to cut out, but I would at least advise, in my view, I would at least advise from not making a movie like this so damn long on Elvis Presley. Because it felt like it was both an Elvis movie as well as a Tom Parker movie. And I felt like their dynamicism together, and how everyone kind of saw him as like the Frankenstein's monster of him, the person who was really unfortunately abusive towards him. I like the storylines with him really understanding, saying, "Hey, you think I'm a villain here?" Because ultimately history does prove him right, as he was a villain. But he's like, "Hey, without me, Elvis wouldn't have been here." And towards that point, I think that's a good point. But that doesn't mean another producer would have found him eventually. I do think he would have been an inevitable, like a huge incline of a musician. But without Tom Parker, he wouldn't have had the same prime or success or consistency as he did, or getting his wife, or all the fame and the money and everything. And I do think that's a very smart storyline that they brought up together. And he's like, "I am not the villain of the story." And with this really weird southern accent, but it mostly does well. And I will say, I got what they were going for with Tom Parker's character, but whenever he was on screen, for me personally, I felt like I was just rolling my eyes, and I'm just like, I get it. I get it. You're kind of just dragging the movie's greatest emphasis of him becoming the abuser to Elvis Presley. It was a little too on the nose for me at times, and I'm just like, okay, I get it. I get what the story's trying to say, and I understand it, and it's just the symbolism and what they're hinting at is too obvious at times. It was just kind of weird, but the story in itself was really smart and compelling. Every single bit of musical scenes I thought was flat out fantastic. Austin Butler, in my opinion, probably gives my favorite performance of the year in that scene a lot. And that's not really saying a lot, but I do think he's just straight up terrific. As someone like him, which I remember seeing him on a couple of Disney shows growing up, I'm just like, oh, that's a good actor. And I'm like, he freaking killed it. He's undeniably, as I said, he's just undeniably my favorite performance of the year. And I'm just like really beside myself when seeing him in this movie. And he's like 30. And yet they kind of slightly aged him down for like the teenage parts. Brought the kind of like, well, my rounded face towards the time when he does ultimately pass away, when Elvis is at the age of 42. I'm spoiling something that happened about 40 years ago. Elvis died, and I thought that was done very well done. I thought it felt like a really interesting bowing out type of moment. And story-wise and thematically, I thought it was just a very beautiful, touching, and as I said, all the musical moments were just incredible. They were beautiful. I loved the hell out of these music parts. They were undeniably the best parts of this movie. Especially the part where they have, where I forgot where it was geographically in the movie, but they had the area where it was like, oh, he was upsetting the established order. He's like, hey, how we got his relations up and going, man, because of all the black churches he went to growing up, and he was causing a lot of the ruckus within the black community within at the time. I thought that was very well done. And he's like, well, a lot of people here don't want me to say these messages. And he's like, you can't just cage me down. I'm Elvis Presley. I have to do this. You can't cage the animal. Eventually, like anyone else who goes old, that inner lion will become more controlled and precise, but it never burns out. So he's like, yeah, you just can't tame me down. You can't do that. And I thought that one little moment where it was alive, I think the first one where they had like that area where it was like for the blacks and the whites. And the area, for me, that particular part in the movie was my favorite. It exemplified his character traits, the tone of the era within the 50s, how he was clashing, of how he first got noticed, within all the ruckus and the incredible, like, whoa, who's this dude who came out of nowhere with all this incredible swagger and great voice and the skill and the presence. And everyone was just like dumbfounded all the ladies were just off the rails. Like, what you see but within the ladies for him in this movie, you'll eventually see within the 60s for the Beatles. And they continued that success, though they kind of bow out with having, a wife and a daughter, and him getting drafted into the Cold War and everything. Along this movie, I thought was really, really, I will say for me, as long as it was, a lot of it did just kind of go by. But for me, it was like the stylized approach at the beginning, and there's some parts where it does kind of string through, where it just kind of slows down. And for me, I'm just like, I'm feeling that gas break there, and I'm just like, okay, you can cut things out. But overall, I thought Elvis was a genuine, really, really fun, very, very dynamic. Gives a very, very strong performance overall. I'm gonna. Oh gosh, I just realized I forgot to give a rating for Turning Red and Lightyear. Okay, Lightyear. Going back to my video this episode before, Lightyear is a 5.5 out of 10. Turning Red is an 8 out of 10. Elvis, Elvis for me is between a 7.5 and an 8. For me, this movie is the dividing point between great and awesome. Like, I'm literally between. Like, I'm going to give it a 7.8. I think it's really good. And so yeah. And Elvis, I'm giving it. Oh, I already gave my review for that. My overall rating for that. It's a 78 on the few movies I reviewed already. Lightyear, Elvis, Turning Red. Now my next review will be at the top. Till then, thanks for watching. Cheers.